G'day everyone and welcome back to the Cyber Minutes podcast. My name is Max and I'm joined by my co-host Flynn as always. And we've got an interesting topic today. It's a bit of a different one from what we're used to talking about, but I'm sure, unless you've been living under a rock, you've heard of Twitter being banned in Brazil. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that, kind of our take on it. Flynn's got a bit of context about the legalities of it, at a kind of surface level. So yeah, let's get right into it, Flynn.
Yeah. So we'll try and remain fairly neutral, I suppose, and just So if anyone follows Elon Musk, obviously he can be a little bit of a hothead at times.
Yep.
He can make sort of rash decisions. What has happened more or less is Brazil's political climate is a bit complex, to say the least.
Yep.
They had an insurrection almost at one point recently. Basically, a lot of people aren't happy with their political structure and whatnot. And what was happening was there were accounts that the Brazilian government had identified as being malicious in nature and spreading misinformation intentionally. So obviously, big bad.
Yep.
In an ideal world, you just ban those immediately. In which Brazil basically said, "Hey, you need to ban these now." In which Elon Musk turned around and gave the free speech card and said, no, this is free speech. You can't silence people. This is their free speech. They can't do that. In which Brazil basically said, okay, you can't operate here. From there, Musk pulled out their representative in Brazil, in which you actually need to have one there legally to run the company. It's looking like, Brazil's not going to have Twitter, which is kind of crazy considering I think it's around 40 million users, something like that.
Wow.
Which is a good chunk of people. That's not a small, and all the ad revenue that comes with that as well.
Now it's interesting because on one end there is a not so good outcome for this. Like, I can understand where Elon's coming from. Now, for people who don't really use Twitter, what you kind of see a lot of the time is people post fake information and misinformation and stuff that's like alluding to something all the time on Twitter. Like, it's very, very frequent, and clearly Twitter's doing not much to take care of it. What they usually rely on is this function called community notes, where if a post is reported enough for being misinformation, then, a set of administrators at Twitter will look at it and, write a comment at the bottom of it showing that it's misinformation or it's not true. And it seems like Elon has kind of put this in as the caveat to not being able to block stuff, like being able to keep people's free speech. He's basically saying you can have your free speech, but you can also be ridiculed for saying stupid stuff. Now, I think that's a pretty good approach. I think that when there's some blatant issues politically going on, for example, people trying to incite a revolution, is some censorship justified at that point? Should the social media companies step in and ban some accounts, do some shadow bans, block people from being able to access certain communities? Should they do that? I don't know. It's kind of a tricky one. I think that considering that Elon's made it this massive deal to try and have Twitter be the free speech platform, if he were to ban those accounts, he would get just as much backlash, because people would say, isn't this meant to be, the free speech platform where you can say, whatever you want, even if people make fun of you for it. I feel like he's in a weird situation, because if he does ban them, people are going to say, they're going to start calling him not true to his word. But if he doesn't ban them, then, the Brazilian government can say that, technically in our country, it's not legal to have this kind of, have people spreading misinformation and it being at least not looked at by the social media company. Now, Elon has fired back, saying that the judges in Brazil are, kind of corrupt, and I don't know how true that is. I don't know, what the truth of it is. It seems like there's some back and forth. Brazil might just go on and just ban it, no matter, regardless, during this time in lieu.
Yeah, they already are in the process of doing it. They basically immediately said get it off all the app stores.
Yeah, right.
So it's basically, if it's not already, by the time this episode out, it's probably going to be.
Yeah.
As you said, I think it's not as simple as a lot of people are making it out to be. On one hand, you have, should certain things be regulated? I think in an ideal world, yes, certain things should be regulated and we should have a good source of truth. But then you could also say, well, there's a slippery slope here. What if we just start, certain things are being censored and a version of the truth is being displayed rather than people taking different sources and coming to their own conclusion, which definitely doesn't happen on Twitter anyway, but that's the ideal world.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard to say. It is a different part of the world as well. So that, they're, I suppose, allowed to run by their own regulation, and if somebody doesn't want to work there because of that, that's perfectly fine for them to do so. I think this will have a big impact on certain content creators or whatever in Brazil. Maybe there's an opportunity for somebody to make a nice social media equivalent of Twitter there. If somebody hasn't done that already, I'd recommend jumping on that, to be honest. But
yeah, it sounds like a good business proposition there.
Yeah, so Brazil also has a history in banning certain things. Telegram was actually briefly banned over its failure to cooperate with certain requests to block certain profiles. So this is I suppose, common law, and there is precedence of it in Brazil as well. And, WhatsApp also faced temporary bans in 2015 and 2016. So based off of all those being temporary, maybe this will just be a temporary thing. Elon Musk is, of course, a character, so he's obviously going to fire back and make that public, I suppose, what's the word? Statement.
Yep.
So maybe it is a little bit of a fireworks thing and it will get figured out behind closed curtains, but we'll see. Of course, also Brazil's, probably the biggest Portuguese-speaking country in the world. For any Portuguese Twitter users, that could also be a massive impact as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so just for a bit of added context there, let's just have a look at the order from the judge. So the judge has said that X must block within, a certain amount of time and in secret certain accounts in their entirety. And they didn't reference a post, but they just said they have to block these accounts. And they gave a list of about 7 accounts. The X legal team made a post saying that, this kind of already breaks the constitution of Brazil because it says that all people are before the law without any distinction whatsoever. And it says that everyone has the right to life, to liberty, to equality, to security, and to property. And it also says that the expression of thought is free and anonymity is forbidden. The expression of intellectual, artistic, scientific, and communications activities is free, independent of censorship or license, and any and all censorship of a political, ideological, and artistic nature is forbidden. So what the ex-legal team is saying is that the censorship here is politically motivated, which in a sense it is, but they're saying that would, to censor that would be in violation of the Brazilian law. So they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place while also firing shots at the Brazilian government to try and defend their own sort of image. And the Brazilian government just looks like, they're not the most squeaky clean government in the world. So they probably just want to sweep this under the rug and nip it in the bud quickly. And they're kind of, I don't know, it seems a little bit unfair to X, but I 100% think that they could have handled this a bit better. Maybe they could have come to some agreement with the Brazilian government about what to do for these accounts. Maybe not blocking them, but maybe limiting how many people can see them, or it's hard to not cross that line of censorship when trying to stop someone from spreading information, even if it's not true. So
yeah, I suppose there is a whole nother bucket of worms with this, is how much should the parent social media company regulate what is actually on their platform, because we obviously know there needs to be, to a degree. Otherwise you get situations like with the Kick Messenger. I don't know if any of our audience is old enough to see that or use that when they were a kid. Basically, I don't think it's a thing anymore, but for a while it was absolutely atrocious. It just had a lot of CP on there and stuff like that, which is obviously that needs to be regulated. That needs to not be there.
Yeah.
And that argument was, oh, well, it's free internet. People can do what they want, which is stupid.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, stop preventing illegal content on your website is important. What constitutes illegal content? Well, I'm pretty sure anything that's, involving harming a child in any way, shape, or form, that should not be on the internet, regardless, right? That I think everyone can agree that should be censored and taken down, and just people should be arrested for distributing that kind of stuff. Versus like political speech, and in some countries, a level of political misinformation might still be illegal, but do we hold that level of illegal to the same regard as something else? It's a tricky one to say, because you're saying that one thing is more illegal than the other, which can that really be true? Or or should, in my opinion, right? Yes, there are different levels of illegal stuff, and things that are endangering children, that should be getting rid of, censored. I feel like that's no one's arguing against that. But political speech, misinformation, it's harder to say, yeah, that should, that's justified in getting rid of that. It's harder to come to that conclusion. And this just seems like a big mess anyway. No one really seems to have the right sort of answer. And both parties, X and the Brazilian government, are just keen on firing shots at each other. Like, freezing Elon Musk's, Starlink bank accounts, and, Twitter making fun of them on their own platform. So, yeah, it's a bit of a tough one.
Yeah, it's definitely muddy waters at the moment.
Thanks for listening. Just a reminder that the Cyber Minutes podcast is for educational purposes only. The views expressed by hosts and guests are their own, not necessarily their employers. Advice discussed is general advice. We promote ethical discussions, not illegal activities. Have a cybersecurity question? Send an email to cyberminutespodcast@gmail.com, as we'd love to answer it. Stay cyber safe.